How's it going, people of the internet? My name is Creation, and why do we fight? Is it for the fame? Is it for the glory? Or is it for the fact knowing that you served your country? Many will answer that they don't know, that it's just instinct, a feature of the world that they live in. Earlier this year, I made a video detailing why I thought that this major conflict was going on in Battlefield 4. Now, the reason that this is important is because by looking at the conflict and where it's going, we can predict what happens next. So today I'm doing something different and going back and going over the Battlefield 4 multiplayer storyline because a lot of you guys seem to be interested in it. So where do we start? Well, we start with the reason. Why would the US want to invade China? Because that is what they're doing in the Battlefield multiplayer. We can see that by going through the map locations that the maps in Battlefield 4 are based on. So let's take a look at the US advancement into China. It all starts on Parcel Storm, which is based on the Parcel Islands in the South China Sea. This is the first attack on Chinese soil and is easily won by the American forces. But why so easy? That's because China is fighting two wars at this point. And we can see that by taking a look at who is fighting who. Russia and China are fighting on the western border of China, and US and China are now fighting on the eastern border of China. It's hard to say why these two countries are now invading China, but I believe it's because of a government change, just like we saw in Vietnam. If China was under some kind of governmental distress, the US and Russia will be the first to step in because the US and Russia depend greatly on China's resources. And it's funny that in the China Rising trailer, the guy who is narrating the trailer says that we are tired of making the US flag and US toys. So just maybe the whole reason that this is happening is because China is going into a civil war or a governmental collapse, and the US and Russia is dividing the country even more to ensure that their resources aren't turned to opposing country. So let's say that this alliance or new government sides with US, then Russia will be sincerely mad. So I think that is why Russia and US are both trying to gain a hold into China to ensure that China does not fall into the hands of the other country. And the battles that we see are the major battles of the war. So as like I said earlier, everything starts on Parcel Storm, and while that is happening, Russia is now invading China through Lane Came. Now Lane Came Dam is the Battlefield 4 map variant of the Zaiwan Dam in Lane Came, of course, and China loses that battle and is pushed to Gold Mud. Gold Mud Railway is the variant of Gold Mud, of course, and Russia is still pushing the invasion on their end. Now let's take back a look at the US forces, because at this time the US has invaded Victoria Harbor in Hong Kong. Now what is called in Battlefield 4 is Dawnbreaker, and it is a major port in Eastern Asia. And this is why the US is attacking it. Because how do you take down a country as big as China? Well, you have to take down its ports, its major supply units, and hopefully you weaken the inner morals of the country. And that is what the US is doing. Now the US does continue marching all the way to Shanghai, and I believe in between Shanghai and Dawnbreaker, this is where the map Flood Zone takes place. Now Flood Zone isn't really that much of an important part. All it does is act as a transition into Shanghai, which is the last map that we see US versus China. And I believe it's safe to assume that the US have won this battle and has mostly taken over the eastern ports of China. But Cry, there are 3 maps you have missed. Well, of course I have saved the best for last. So the 3 maps that I haven't discussed yet is Zavad 311, Operation Locker, and Rogue Transmission. Zavad 311 is located in Ukraine, and US and Russian forces are in conflict there. This is what led me to believe that the US and Russia have already been having a war before this China situation happened. And I am so lost on why that would be happening. Maybe it links back to Battlefield 3. I still haven't even really tried to put the Battlefield 3 maps together. But Russia is definitely in conflict with US before the whole China incident has happened. And this is why in Operation Locker, Russian and US forces are not afraid to shoot each other. The coolest thing about Operation Locker is where we find the empty nuke cases, meaning that the bombs were moved before the two armies had got there, maybe by Chinese. There is helicopter pads everywhere, and the prison is abandoned. So what's weird is maybe these nukes were being hidden. Now the last map that piqued my interest was Rogue Transmission, because as of right now there is only one observatory radio telescope that looks like the one located in Rogue Transmission, and it's halfway across the world in Puerto Rico. So I was really scratching my head until I found out that China is planning to build a telescope bigger than the one in Puerto Rico, and also it's going to be finished by 2016. Now the Battlefield 4 multiplayer takes place in 2020, so it has plenty of time to be done and incorporated into the Battlefield 4 multiplayer storyline. They are building this observatory telescope on the eastern province of China, and this is why we see Russian versus China on this map. But the story is not yet over. After all these battles happen, and Russia and the US have pretty much tore China apart, the China Rising DLC comes. And as we can see by looking just at the trailer, China is now fighting back and reclaiming some of its territory. China is now on the offensive and is clearly beating the US and pushing them back to their ports. So then Naval Strike comes. You may be wondering, why did I skip Second Assault? Well, Second Assault is pretty much the DLC where US and Russia soldiers are having kind of a nostalgic battle of places where they have fought before in Battlefield 3. So moving back to Naval Strike is where the Chinese Armada now is pushing the US out of its sea and out of its country. And the US will continue to lose according to Dragon's Teeth. Now in the Dragon's Teeth maps, we start to see that China hasn't just stopped at reclaiming its own borders, but now it is invading other partnering Asian countries, and it's starting to take over the Asian continent. And I believe this is what's going to lead us to Final Stand, where the US either pushes the Chinese back or gets crushed itself, because I believe that in the Final Stand DLC we'll start to see more European and maybe US map, because China's ambition has pretty much taken it very far and it is now a greater superpower than it once was. So I would like to see how this all plays out in the end. I don't know about a 3-faction war. A lot of people have been kind of suggesting that the US, Russia, and China will kind of butt heads in the last DLC. I think it's completely possible, but it's more up to DICE and could they actually pull it off. Personally, I would love it, and I'm pretty sure most of you guys will love it. So make sure to leave your thoughts and suggestions in the comment section below, and leave a rating telling me whether or not you enjoyed this type of video. Well, I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay creative.
That utilizes this protocols to enable user